Good evening to everyone. This special call session of the Board of Trustees of the Spring Independent School District is officially called to order on Tuesday, June 30th, 2020. On March 16, 2020, Governor Greg Abbott granted a request by Attorney General Ken Paxton to temporarily suspend a limited number of open meeting laws to the extent necessary to allow telephonic and video conference meetings in accordance to the COVID-19 coronavirus. Accordingly, due to health and safety concerns, this meeting is being conducted by video conference. The time is now 7:01 p.m. Board trustees present are Winfred Adams Jr., Kelly P. Hodges, Deborah Jensen, Justine Durant, Dawn Davis, and myself, Rhonda Newhouse. I would like to ask everyone to mute their microphones unless speaking. Thank you. Our next item is opening remarks. And I would like to take a few moments and make a few opening remarks, and then I will open it up for the other board trustees to share any remarks that they would like to make. But tonight, I'm very pleased that we will be discussing the next steps in Spring ISD as we continue our work in building an inclusive and respectful community for everyone to learn and work together. This Equity Action Plan that we will be hearing about is near and dear to my heart. As many of you know, I have dedicated my life to public education, working as a teacher, a counselor, an administrator, and now as a trustee. I have seen so much over the course of those years, stories that could fill a book. I have witnessed changes and upheavals, progress and setbacks, and I have watched with pride as so many students I have had the honor to know over the years have pursued their education, no matter what, because of a belief that education would empower them and help produce a more just and equal world. There is nothing more important to me than putting systems and resources in place to ensure every child has the opportunity for success in school as in life. Equity has been one of my personal goals for as long as I have been working in education, and I'm excited about the future in Spring ISD. We have some work to do, and some of it may be challenging, but the joys and the rewards of that work are real, especially if we come to it with goodwill and an honest desire to build a better world for all of our children. We're going to be diving deep into this work in the coming school year, and I'm confident that our focus on equity is going to make a difference in the lives of our students and our entire Spring ISD community. I've attended several workshops on equity in our schools, and I look forward to our administration presenting to our community the Spring ISD Equity Action Plan. Thank you. And now I will ask other board trustees if you would like to have a few words.
President Newhouse, this is Deborah Jensen. Thank you for those wonderful words. I'd like to just add that tonight we're going to be seeing scenarios for opening schools, and also we're going to be seeing our equity plan. And if you want to know what's going through trustees' heads at this point when we're seeing these things, I will tell you every one of us wants the best for our students. That's what we're going for. And Ms. Newhouse, I don't have the extensive real world experience in school as you have. I've been a teacher, and I've certainly dealt with many administrators in school districts. And I would tell you, we are so fortunate this time. We have the right people in the right place. And we really have a wonderful, wonderful organization now in Spring ISD. And I think we are up to this challenge, and I have every confidence in us choosing the right way.
Thank you, Dr. Jensen. Anyone else?
President Newhouse and Dr. Watson and leadership team, and also to our community that may be listening tonight. First of all, I strongly support the comments from our board president. And I'm on board with what we decide tonight as far as our plan and the plan we're going to put in place, because this is a needed hour and a needed time to make this particular, to put this process in place. But my other comments are the last time I spoke in a meeting, it was pertaining to a Westfield ROTC project and renovation. And I wanted to talk to Dr. Watson, my colleagues, everyone's on this call, and especially to our community. I had a chance to do a walkthrough on Monday at Westfield ROTC new facility. The Westfield ROTC Center is the name that it has right now. And without a doubt, I had notes, but I misplaced my notes. I'm sorry. So I'm doing an impromptu. So I'm gonna try to be as quick as possible, because this is very dear to my heart. And I'm gonna try to hold my emotions also. But anyway, after observing and doing the walkthrough, I want to commend Mark, Gary, and also Mr. Turner. I don't know his first name, I'm sorry. And everybody's been a part of this process for the renovation that they're doing. All standards are met and beyond, surpassed. I was only looking for 8 lanes on the range, and I found they having 12 lanes. The ceiling will be 10 feet high, and it's 14 feet high. I was looking for an indoor drill area, so when it's raining outside, when it's in climate weather, they can drill inside. They have an area now to be designated for indoor drill. I was looking for growth and expansion, and to my knowledge, they have enough space, enough classroom to host up to 250 students to 300 students. So I was looking for privacy as far as ROTC. They have access to their own facility, like the Canaan and the rest of the Spring Navy ROTC. And I found out that this new renovation, they have private access to the center, and what really amazed me, I guess I didn't see it very closely, Mark. I did not know that the wall was tore out to include the special ed area. I thought special ed would still be in that area, but to my understanding after Monday tour, that's gonna be completely moved somewhere else. The space is adequate, it's superb, so I want the community to know that was listening to me the last time I spoke. I totally support the Westfield ROTC project. I'm on board with it, and I'm excited to see the final product. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Anyone else?
Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to do sort of the public service announcement on civic engagement in our community. Early voting for the primary election started Monday, and I just want to remind the community that it is part of our civic duty to be engaged and to vote, not just in the presidential elections every 4 years, but in our primary elections and our elections that happen in between that time. So Chris Bell used to always do this announcement, and so since he's no longer here, I will go ahead and say, if you want improvement in your community, get out and vote. Be civically engaged. Thank you.
I don't want to miss anyone. Is there anyone else? Okay. Thank you, trustees. Dr. Watson, we would now like to hear from you for remarks for tonight.
Good evening, President Newhouse and all of our Board of Trustees. Once again, it's great seeing you all as we discuss our path forward. Here lately, we've been seeing each other, it feels like almost every week or every other day. So tonight we have two very important topics that we're going to be discussing with you. As you've already alluded to in your comments, we're going to be discussing equity and our scenario-based planning. So first, we're going to discuss the development of our equity plan. And as you know, and as we discussed on yesterday, in Spring ISD, we value diversity and we treat everyone with dignity and respect. Our team is going to share our plan to make your vision and focus on equity a reality. Second, we're going to discuss our 2020-2021 scenario-based planning, which includes survey data, staff and parent feedback, as well as the best thinking from our teachers, support staff, and administrators regarding our return to school in August. As you know, we're experiencing change and uncertainty at levels that we could have never imagined. As we plan for the fall, we have done so making sure to keep the safety of our students and staff in mind, as well as ensuring students have access to high-quality teacher-led daily instruction regardless of the environment that we're currently living in. Although we're going to be sharing data and plans tonight, we also want to host a separate parent and staff virtual town hall during the week of July 13th to gather additional feedback before our plans are finalized. I do want to say a very special thank you to all of our teachers, support staff, assistant principals, central office administration, and staff for the many hours they've spent preparing for our 2020-2021 school year and our presentation tonight. We know there's a lot of work to be done. We know that the guidance that we receive from TEA changes weekly. And in order for us to continue moving forward, and more importantly, getting funding, we've got to make sure that we meet the needs of all of our students. And so with that, there's a lot of discussion we're going to have tonight. That concludes my remarks, and I'll turn it back over to you, Ms. Newhouse, so we can start with our first presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Watson. We will now continue with tonight's agenda. For our first item next, I would like to recognize our Chief Communications Officer, Tiffany Dunn Oldfield.
Good evening, President Newhouse, Dr. Watson, and esteemed members of the board. We're incredibly excited. As many of you have mentioned, we have two extremely important presentations this evening. And our second presentation, I'm not jumping to that one, but our second presentation really shows collaboration at its best. And so in our first presentation, I want to kick off the floor, and I'm going to turn it over in just a second to my partner in both of the projects that are being presented this evening, Dr. Lupita Hinojosa, because the setup for the equity action plan that we're looking at is really the setup of a structure that will allow us to build a strong equity action plan, a strong equity agenda for the district to go deep into that work, but to have work that is sustainable. And to do that, we've set up a structure that's really, it's side by side with our community. And so tonight, Dr. Hinojosa is going to be presenting the structure that we have developed, and she's going to include a very short timeline that's talking about that community work to build out the framework, to really look at the things that we want to work on in the district, but even then a longer timeline that's going to show the sustainability. And our approach to the work is not just saying, this is the work we want to do, we want to kick this off, but there's an actual plan to make it sustainable, to embed it in the district. And I'm incredibly excited for her to be presenting this work. As many of you know, Dr. Hinojosa is our Chief of Innovation and Equity, and I couldn't think of a better person to be leading this work. And I'm incredibly proud to have her on my team and for her to be able to show you the work ahead for us. Again, side by side with our community, side by side with you, our Board of Trustees. And with that, I'll turn the floor over to Dr. Hinojosa.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, if you don't mind. Get the presentation up. So, Ms. Newhouse and members of the board, superintendent, it is truly an honor, as Ms. Dunn Oldfield was saying, it is truly an honor to have the opportunity at this time to be able to present to you the administration's plan, as the superintendent said, our plan to make your vision a reality, to have this opportunity to really take The core values of the district led by you, the board, back in 2015, where we stated as a core value that we as a district value diversity and treat everyone with dignity and respect. We want to tonight share with you our equity action plan. And as I said, driven by your vision, driven by the district's core values, and most importantly, driven by the board's governance committee equity statement that you see before you. We are proud as the district to have you as the board lead this and put this at the top of the priority to ensure that our vision and mission and purpose in this district is focused on choices and policies that strongly impact the marginalized student groups. The emphasis that you have put as a board in the belief that all students, regardless of their ability, ethnicity, race, language, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, family structure, or socioeconomic status, that everyone should have equitable access to opportunities, resources, support systems, and most importantly, that educational rigor that we know all students deserve. And so very proud to take your vision and be able to start a plan for our district to begin the work on equity, to be able to expand this. And one of the pieces, as Ms. Dunn Oldfield said, this is a very collaborative and a very transparent process that we want to launch in our district and ultimately in our entire community. And we know that this is not easy work. We have looked across the country to look at what other districts are doing. And here before you are 3 examples that we've looked at. Chicago Public Schools began their equity work a few years back and is a very strong model, as well as Washington, D.C. Public Schools, as well as the Denver Public Schools. And you see that their work across the country has been highly recognized. And also here in Texas, through Leadership ISD, looking at the work that board members have done in Fort Worth, we want to be able to take what other districts have put out there and learn from them to be able to carry out your vision. And so here before you, we have a draft of what we believe our equity work will entail, focused on the board's goal of making sure that we provide excellent and equitable outcomes for all students. And so we believe that if we can focus on these 5 areas, awareness, staff development, the analysis of data, making sure we hear the voices of our entire district and community, and providing student supports, that we believe working on these 5 areas together with passion, we can ensure that we bring your goals of excellent and equitable outcome for all students. And so as we begin this work, there is a structure that we are recommending to put in place. And the structure starts out with the creation of a steering committee that will be instrumental in guiding this work. We believe we would have in this steering committee our trustees, you, the board, along with our superintendent, and the opportunity to bring in community members that are stakeholders and have a vision for our district. The structure would also include a work group that would bring together our leaders from the schools, as well as our central office staff, and most importantly, our teachers and students, along with their parents. And finally, to ensure that this structure is one that is open to our entire community, we want to build in forums that would allow us the opportunity to bring in student groups and listen to them, as well as parents and community members, setting up forums for the strong advisory committees that we already have in our district that are so invested in our work. Forums that would allow the voices from the community, as well as the opportunity for us to bring people in the field of equity, people in the field of culture diversity, so that we're able to have a robust discussion and ultimately bring all that together to our action plan for equity. And so to help in the process of having a transparent and open discussion and dialogue with our community and our district, we are doing a call for our community to participate. So here you see before you an equity plan committee application. We know we have a lot of very vested parents and community members that would like to participate in this committee. And so we have created a application that will be put out for all of our community in English and in Spanish, because we want to make sure that we have all voices at the table. And this will also help us to promote the work that we will be doing in order to create this vision. So you'll see that we also want to promote this application process and this work out in social media and in the web. As Ms. Dunfield was shared with you, we have a tight timeline to get this work started. So here you see before you a 6-month process that kicks off now in July with the creation of a steering committee. Steering committee would be able to guide our work, including that of the work group. We want to be able to have a kickoff meeting at the end of this month, and then begin to host the work group meetings as well as the forums. One of the critical pieces that we believe we need is to secure a partner that would conduct an equity audit. We believe that oftentimes we may have either policies in place or practices that we have in place that unknowingly may be creating inequity in our district. And so in order to be able to create an equity action plan that truly addresses all areas of the district and all practices, we believe we want to reach out and secure a partner that would conduct an equity audit from the schools all the way through to our central office and all of the practices that are involved. We also want to do a survey. We've been very fortunate that our parents are extremely engaged and they want to share their thoughts and their values with us. And so we want to conduct a survey to gain their understanding and what they see, because oftentimes the perception of our parents or the perception of the community becomes their reality. In September, we also want to go ahead and kick off our audit and conduct those forums. And as you can see, October, November becomes a lot of heavy lifting with our steering committee leading this work, working side by side with our work group in order to ultimately create an action plan that we want to bring to you, to the board, for your review and approval, so that we can actually begin this work. Along the way, and you'll see here that we've called out some phase 1 activities, because we do believe that there are things that we can immediately start working on, things that we already know need to be addressed. So while the steering committee and the work group are creating and that final action plan doesn't mean that we will wait until December to do any work. There are things that need to be addressed, and we understand, and we want to begin that work, that awareness work, and that work that we know is very relevant. We've established and proposed some work for our steering committee. As I said earlier, we want to kick off on July 30th at the end of this month to start meeting with our steering committee so that they may begin giving us that guidance and that focus for that audit team, that audit, equity audit, as well as the work group. We want to make sure and set the times and set those dates aside so that we can do this work. The first step for our steering committee is, as I said earlier, we want them to establish the priority focus areas. We've identified those 5 areas as an administration, but of course want to take the lead from this steering committee so that they can focus our work. We actually also want our steering committee to develop a community-friendly equity statement. We believe that in order for us to embrace and embody this work, that the more that you can say it and do it on a daily basis, you will internalize it. So we're looking for the steering committee to help us create an equity statement, maybe 2 to 3 sentences, that as we begin our meetings every day or our professional development, that we start out with that equity statement, that our students are able to recite that equity statement so that we can not only embrace it, but begin to embody the work. And last but not least, our steering committee, we'd like for them to identify those priority data points they want this audit to. And finally, here is a timeline, and just as I shared, this is not something that we as the administration take lightly. We know this is a heavy lift. We know there's a lot of work to be done, and we believe that this is ongoing, continuous work to make your vision a reality. So the first 6 months are very tight in what we want to be able to do in order to bring to you an action plan to review. And we see this work as continuous work for the next 5 years, as we look in every area of our district to ensure that we are providing excellent education for our students in order to ensure we have excellent outcomes for all students. So at this time, I will stop sharing, and if there's any questions.
I am hearing no questions. Dr. Hinojosa, I know the board is in agreement that we do need this equity action plan. Many members of the board have attended the same workshops that I attended on equity plans in our school districts. And we said that this is something that we all agreed we need in Spring ISD. So I know they are all looking forward to working with the administration on this equity action plan.
And President Newhouse, I'd just like to share that having an additional opportunity to see it laid out in that way, Dr. Hinojosa, it really hits home and drives forward the vision that we have for moving forward. So thank you for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
We will continue.
And Ms. Newhouse, again, it's an honor to be able to work and get this action plan together to be able to make your vision, the board's vision, a reality for Spring ISD. Thank you.
I would just add, so I'm looking at the number of community participants we have at this meeting right now. And I want to encourage our community to fully engage this process. And really, we need your help to make this happen. Dr. Watson always saying that in spring, we win together as a team. We really need the community's support to make this possible.
Yes, we do, Mr. Adams. Thank you. Thank you. So for our next item, I'd like to again recognize our Chief Communications Officer, Tiffany Dunn Oldfield.
Good evening again, and huge shout out to Dr. Hinojosa. We are very excited about the equity work and partnering with you. Huge shout out.
Yes.
She's done an incredible job. I'm going to jump right in. We do have a large presentation. I hope you guys got your binders. They're hot off the presses. And as we walk through the presentation, I'll be highlighting. We have brought the level for, oh, yeah, I'm glad to see your huge binder. I'm a tree lover, so it's always hard for me, but sometimes these things just have to be printed and binders have to be made because I know that you guys want to have that view of the work that's going on. And in the presentation, we're going to keep it high level, and we have a lot of our planning team members here with us tonight that are going to be presenting the work. The most important part in your binder is the 11 planning teams that worked. You can see the names of the planning teams in the binder. You can see the names of the planning teams, and it shows the number of people that have been involved, and I want you to know that the work and who it belongs to. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and kick off this evening's presentation. Is my screen up? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So many of you, we have been communicating with our community, but they are anxiously waiting to hear our plans for the next year. And so always in my department, as we think through in the organization of the work, this came to, really responding to what our community needs and the great job that so many departments, so many campus leaders did in responding in the springtime to our community's needs. We're going to also be talking this evening really about reimagining education. We're not the only ones doing this work. This is being done across school districts, across Houston, across the state, across the nation, and across the world. But we're also going to talk about a drive to really reopen. And we want to do this in a safe way. But for many of our students and our families, school and that in-person instruction, there's no substitute for it. We can do a great job with remote, but that really drive to reopen in a safe way. And that's going to be a big drive of our conversation today. And the people that have been working on that have really reimagined what education can look like and how we could potentially reopen, but with safety first. So I'm going to kick off in just a second. I'm going to turn the floor over, but I kind of want to just walk you through how the presentation will be organized this evening. I'm going to start off, and our Chief Financial Officer, Ann Westbrooks, will kick off and really kind of go through the details related to ADA requirements and how we'll be funded in this new world that we're entering in 2021. I'm going to revisit very briefly the scenario planning process to just as a reminder of the work that was said in our last meeting with you as the board and the work that's been going on this past month. A key part that I know you will be interested in, I am presenting high level from our community survey, and that survey was both for staff and for parents, and there's some great information coming into us in that survey that also gives us feedback to the recommendations that we've already put forth, but gives us additional input as we work in July and get into August. And then I'm going to go over and give you an overview of the options that we are going to be providing our students and talk you through those options. And then I'm going to be presenting something that has a really interesting name, and you might have already got a glimpse of it in your binder, but our SISD operational decision meter. It was really important to us as we started to do this deep work and scenario planning, was to really understand how we were going to make decisions related to the COVID-19 environment in our community, and really wanting to have a plan and a way of communicating with our families based on how we were making decisions, and that everything would be done in a very transparent way, but again, with safety first. And then we're going to go through something interesting that happened in the process, in our scenario building process, was these really strong consensus items that came to the top of the work with this very diverse cross-functional team. And then briefly, we'll go into next steps, which is really the roll up your sleeves, get the job done in July work. So with that, I'm going to go on to the next slide and let Ann Westbrooks kick off, and I'll be driving for her over here.
Good evening, President Newhouse and members of the board. As we progressed through the development of the 2021 budget, we were concerned about how we would receive our state funding given the uncertainty that was caused by the pandemic. As you know, the school finance system revolves around average daily attendance. In order to receive funding, schools must operate a minimum of 75,600 minutes over the year, and students must attend a minimum of 4 hours per day to generate full funding. On June 23rd, TEA began releasing guidance related to funding for remote instruction, noting the transition from the crisis response, which we were in during the spring 2020 semester, where funding was received using a hold harmless methodology, to now funding based upon instruction. Our parents did an excellent job of pivoting to assist their students with instruction when the pandemic forced our buildings to close and forced our instruction to move online. However, in order to receive funding in the 2021 school year, remote instruction must be provided continuously by our professional teaching staff. So the two new methods to fund remote instruction are synchronous and asynchronous instruction. The synchronous instruction is most closely related to our on-campus instruction. And so that means it's two-way, it's real-time live instruction between our teachers and our students using the computer at a scheduled time each day. The district would have the capability to offer synchronous instruction live platforms, one of which is through our learning management system, Schoology, which has a video conferencing capability called School Conference. Another option would be using a platform such as Google Meet. With the asynchronous instruction, it's more self-paced. Our students are engaged with the learning materials on their own time, but they still have the opportunity to interact with their teachers intermittently using the computer. It's just not at a scheduled set time. We would have the ability to offer asynchronous instruction similar to what we did during the spring 2020 semester using project-based learning through our Schoology platform, or using other online resources such as SuccessMaker through Pearson, or through Edgenuity, or a tool such as Edgenuity. It's important to note that both of the instructional delivery formats must cover the required curriculum and all of the TEKS that are required for our instruction in order for us to receive funding. Here's a look at the two attendance methods and the requirements that are associated with receiving funding under each of the two methods. So with the synchronous instruction, there is a minimum amount of daily instructional minutes that are required in order to receive full funding. Under the pre-K2 age group, there's no funding under the synchronous method of instruction, and that's because it's been determined that it's not developmentally appropriate or a good instructional practice to have that age group sitting in front of a computer or a device for 180 plus minutes per day. So there's no funding that can be generated for synchronous instruction under the pre-K through second grade age group. Third through fifth grade does have a requirement of 180 instructional minutes per day, and our 6th through 12th graders have a requirement of 240 instructional minutes per day. However, those minutes do not have to be consecutive. And so, for example, with our secondary students who are grades 6th through 12th grade, they have that 240-minute requirement, and we could split that up throughout the day. So, for example, we could say that at 9 a.m. in the morning, there's going to be a 120-minute block scheduled for synchronous instruction, live interaction between our student and our teachers. And then the students can move in to do an independent work and come back again at 1 o'clock in the afternoon for another block of 120 minutes of synchronous instruction. So even though that time wasn't a consecutive period of time, we still got in 240 instructional minutes in the day. And so we would receive full funding for those students, even though the time was broken up. Under the synchronous attendance method, we'd be required to maintain daily schedules that document the amount of instruction that's being provided each day. And we would also have to ensure that we have an official attendance time each day that aligns with the district's policy. A student that's logged on and participating in the live synchronous instruction would be considered, so they would be considered present during that lesson. If they're not logged on, then they're considered absent under the synchronous method. The district would have to file an attestation with the TEA prior to the first day of instruction. And what we have to attest to is that all of our teachers have been trained on how to deliver remote instruction using the district's learning management system, that teachers have had the ability to and have been required to practice delivering synchronous instruction lessons, and the district would have to attest that we have provided the required tech support to our students and our teachers. This attestation would not only be required to be submitted to TEA, but also would have to be posted on the district's website for our parents and our community to see it. Under the asynchronous method, attendance is earned through daily engagement. And TEA has noted daily engagement as one of the three items, one being daily progress in the learning management system, daily progress via student-teacher interactions, the completion of assignments and turning in those assignments, whether it's through email or submitting an assignment through Schoology, like what was done in the spring semester. There is a plan that has to be created, developed, and submitted to TEA. And in that plan, we have to detail how the engagement will be tracked. Students who were assigned to be in a synchronous instruction class, but missed that class and were marked absent because they weren't logged on and participating, would still have the ability to be considered present under the asynchronous instructional method, so long as they met that daily engagement that we just talked about through progress in the LMS, teacher-student interaction, or by turning in an assignment. Under the asynchronous attendance method, all grade levels generate funding, including the pre-K through second grade group. And so it's important to note that though our pre-K through second grade students do not generate funding under the synchronous method in the traditional sense, there's still an opportunity for us to provide instruction in a synchronous environment to our students that are in pre-K 2, but just as a part of our asynchronous plan. And so what that means is that we could have a 30-minute session, or whichever amount of time makes sense for our pre-K through second graders. We could have a 30-minute session in the afternoon, 30-minute session in the morning, but it would be as part of our asynchronous method of instruction. And again, as mentioned, in order to earn attendance under the asynchronous method, we have to submit a plan to TEA that outlines the instruction that will be provided through the asynchronous method. And so within that plan, we would have to spell out the instructional schedule, which sets the expectations for when and what setting our students will be learning and what the expectations are for them under the asynchronous method. We would have to explain the material design, which is the curriculum that'll be used for asynchronous student learning. We'd also have to detail and define how we will measure daily student progress, as well as outline the district's implementation plan. What supports will we provide to our teachers and to our students in order to learn in an asynchronous environment? The application for the asynchronous plan that's required will open on July 15th. So the district would have to submit a letter of intent, which is an intent to submit a plan to TEA, sometime between July 15th and the first day of instruction. Once we submit the letter of intent, we're able to begin using the asynchronous method and taking attendance for asynchronous instruction. But the plan in its entirety has to be submitted to TEA prior to October 1st. As soon as the plan is submitted, there's a conditional approval that's provided. And that conditional approval is good for the first 6 weeks, which means whatever plan is submitted, we can move along using that plan, automatically approved through the end of the third 6 weeks, which for us is January 29th, 2021. Once the application is approved, or excuse me, is submitted, TEA will take between 30 to 45 days to review it and either send it back for corrections or approve that plan. And then from the fourth 6 weeks forward, we'll be operating under the approved, officially approved TEA plan. Here's just a couple of additional items that are very important related to ADA. And the first one is that for the 2021 ADA that's generated by remote instruction, it's capped at the 2018-2019 level. And what that means is if we were in remote instruction the entire 2021 school year, the highest level of funding that we could receive for ADA would be capped at the 2018-2019 school year amount of ADA. However, if we have, and hopefully we do, have on-campus instruction, any ADA that's generated through on-campus instruction is not subject to that cap. Only the remote instruction ADA is subject to the cap at the 2018-2019 level. Our grading policy must be consistent with on-campus instruction and with remote instruction, whether we're under the synchronous or the asynchronous method, in order for us to receive full funding. The 90% minimum attendance rule applies again, beginning in the 2021 school year, and that means that our students must attend 90% of the instructional days in order to receive credit for a course or to be eligible to be promoted to the next grade level. And as of right now, our plan is for the district to utilize both methods, both the synchronous and the asynchronous methods to deliver instruction, while at the same time ensuring that we have stabilized funding for the district.
And did you want to pause for some questions? See if there's any questions on that, or do we want to go into the presentation, the rest of the presentation?
Definitely, if there are questions, we can pause.
Well, since I'm not hearing any questions, and since I am driving the presentation, I can't see anybody. I have it minimized because I'm going to go through some data and I need to have it minimized. But I'm going to go ahead and just jump into the presentation this evening. And Ann did, I always use the term buried the lead, but Ann buried the lead in that the plan that was developed and really started in May, we were really pleased. A lot of school districts, we were all kind of waiting for the TEA guidelines to come out, but the plan that's been developed by our planning teams, I feel like really fits and aligns, and we're well positioned to meet the TEA requirements that Ann just outlined. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the work. So just as a reminder, we used a lot of resources as we started to plan out how did we want to structure the work about preparing for 2021. And as I mentioned, one article in particular that we really gravitated to was this Education Elements article that talked about to design a responsive return path for the district. It was based on a McKinsey & Company study that's been used related to scenario planning. And I know I've mentioned this before, but the very act of scenario planning and the discussions that it involves about imagining, if this happens, what would we do? If this happens, what would we do? Is really helps you kind of build, you know, we had a clear purpose, was this to to open and to open in a safe way and to have a plan for 2021. But it also created opportunities for us to reimagine what school could look like for us. And in this work, we made some pivots. And I'm going to be talking about some of those pivots that I think had a stronger outcome for the district as we plan for 2021. And I just wanted to remind the work that our scenario-based planning process borrowed from. So again, you guys have seen, and I know in your binder, we started off our scenario planning process with these 4 scenarios, minimum social distancing. We're able to open our schools, minimum social distancing, a need for significant social distancing. This scenario 3, this combination of significant social distancing and rolling closures. And scenario 4, and we used the term at that time, not to open, but it's really to rethink. And we're going to talk a little bit about the plans, because we don't see ourselves going back to the way we were in the spring, even in an environment where the presence of COVID-19 definitely is with us for the upcoming year. We all know that, but even an environment where we might have contagion, and is how do we open our schools, particularly for our most vulnerable students? How do we make sure that the students that need and want the in-person instruction have that open to them? So again, you guys have seen this. We had 11 planning teams, always with the goal of having these 5 micro plans that would be taken and developed further out in July, but would really lead the work for opening in 2021. And so on the right is kind of these high-level descriptors of what these micro plans are about. So school schedules and class configuration. How are we going to structure our day? What is our class going to look like? Our student learning plan at the core is, how are we going to provide great instruction to our students and that excellent equitable outcomes that we often that we talk about? And then staffing and professional development. How are we going to make sure that our staff have what they need to be successful? And a student and family support plan, there are all these ancillary things that in some ways really changed with COVID-19, and wanting those supports that our families need to continue. And then a facilities plan is really looking at the way we manage our facilities in a very different way in light of COVID-19 and the contagion, and wanting to control that. At the top, you see our header. There are 11 planning teams, 100+ team members were involved in this, but again, with the goal of the 5 micro plans. So it was a really tight timeline. We kicked off in June. We started to look at the scenario planning, the process and the structure for it, but we really kicked off in June. First off, when our principals had a little bit of a breather coming from the spring semester, but even then we kicked off before that breather came. But the work, we also had to plan in what order we wanted to do the work, because the school and class configurations and schedules had to come first, because that's how are we going to structure our day. And then understanding, once we knew kind of our recommendations for that, our student learning plan, and then based on that, our staffing and PD plan. So these plans had to be done in an order, and each of these teams transitioned, and we had transition meetings where they basically passed the baton off to the next group that was taking with their plan, and the next groups had to understand their recommendations and then build their plan from that. It was a 4 intense days for each of our planning teams. You can see here we had clear goals and structures for each of the days. The first day was to really sit in the scenario. Anybody who's been involved in scenario planning, it's difficult because all of us love to jump to solutions, but we really had to sit in the scenario and think, what would this look like in this COVID-19 environment, in the different scenarios? What would it look like and what would the impact be, so that we could explore and then start to create and then make our recommendations that are in our micro plan. We did establish, and I joked about this, but we established some team norms that before every meeting, our team leads were using these team norms to start the conversation. And two that I just want to highlight was the bullet number 3. We really, our staff just embraced this one, but really reimagining what education can be. And as we were doing this work is to think, because we can get stuck as that's not possible. We've never done that way before. And really having to step back and saying, you know, we were here to provide for our students, and how can we do that in reimagining? And the other one is the last bullet, which in developing these team norms, but I know all of our team members have laughed at this, and I think it's going to stay with us. So because we're also in a tough budget environment, and I know you, our board, knows that only so well, is that we said, you know, we are being called to do something incredibly different next school year, but we're not being given new funds to do that. So we said, and when in doubt, when we're looking at things, to administer a WLT, which we call the Westbrook's Litmus Test. Would it pass Ann Westbrook's Litmus Test as we were looking and reimagining? So community impact and feedback. So this is the survey, and we're about a week into our survey. We waited on our survey because we had some strong recommendations coming out from our first teams, particularly our class configurations and our school schedules group. But we really wanted to see what the TEA was going to say with their guidelines before we kind of tested our recommendations with our community. And so we waited, and once the TEA came out with their guidelines, we saw that our recommendations definitely fit, and we issued our survey. And our survey was for both parents and then for staff. And I'm going to walk you through the data. And I know as board members, we can, give you a deeper dive on the data as needed, and just let us know if there's any data points. You're always welcome to email that you'd like to see at a different level. I'm happy to provide that. And a huge shout out to Jennifer Cobb and her team for getting this work done. So one of the things, and you'll see throughout the survey, is we wanted to get a feel for how our community was feeling too in the COVID-19 environment, because I think that's going to be very telling to us as we're planning, and the sensitivities we need to have related to communications, but also in just some of the concerns about returning to in-person instruction and where the concerns lie with our families. But we did ask one general question that just said, you know, concerned about your family's well-being. And I don't think this should surprise any of us, but the stress of COVID-19 on our community, on communities around the nation, 97% of our parents said that they are concerned or somewhat concerned about the well-being of their family. And you can see 95% of our staff. And that's something that we need to be sensitive to in this work. We also asked, we thought this was important, and I haven't seen this in other surveys, but we really wanted to know too some of the stressors that our families are feeling. So also too, as we're communicating, as we're planning, and we're looking for supports for our families and our community members, including staff, what are some of the stressors they're feeling? Of course, health concerns is here. We did see here, you can see it runs fairly parallel on the lack of childcare for both staff and parents. As many of our community members, their childcare has been disrupted. That's a stressor for our community. And we did ask, because sometimes we think of our staff, they're employed with us, but if you can see here on the staff, you can significantly see on our parents' side, you know, that loss of income almost being 50% of our families, saying that there's some loss of income due to the COVID-19 environment. But even on our staff side, we asked related to their household, and you can see that they also have stressors there too, as their household income and loss of income and loss of employment too as well. Just important for us to understand as we're communicating, as we're working to support our community. So as of today, we asked this question, and I'm going to come back to this question at the end, because we set up our survey in a way is that we asked, how comfortable are you sending all of your children back to school in the fall? And this is definitely sobering, as you can see here, on the very uncomfortable to somewhat uncomfortable. 60% of our parents are saying that they feel uncomfortable sending their children back. They have 17% when you combine the somewhat comfortable and very comfortable 17%, but you can see that significant 60%. We're going to come back to this question because the way we set the survey up was to also explain to them the things that we're working on. Then we come back and ask this question. And I'm very happy, pleased to see that we had some what I call shifters, or they moved and they became more comfortable as we explained the recommendations and the work ahead to prepare our schools. So on this one here, it is for our employees and their plans to return to Spring ISD. We have 90% of our staff members saying yes, they plan to return, but we do have 9% that say that they are unsure. We do ask the folks that are unsure, and a lot of it is health concerns. And we have 1% that do not plan to return. We're looking at that data very closely. I know Dr. Hill will be sharing that and working with her on a closer analysis of that data. But that's definitely something as we prepare for 2021 that's important for us to know and important for us to reach out and to work with those, particularly that 9%, to have some conversations with them. The survey, of course, was confidential. We don't have any data at the employee level, but understanding that we do have some employees that feel unsure because of health concerns, we want to be communicating with them as a group to help them understand that we're here to support them. And so you can see here, though, this gives a little bit more of a breakdown. I'm not going to go, but we do have 9%, almost 10% of our staff that are ready to return, which is also good information for us to know. But you can see almost 1 out of 2 staff members are nervous about returning and need additional information to feel better about returning to their office place or campus. So this is a question that we asked about, did your child struggle staying focused on their remote learning lessons? And you can see here, 57% said they did not struggle with their remote learning lessons, but 43% said, yes, my child struggled with their remote learning lessons, and that kind of staying focused, meaning that the parent had to step in, the guardian had to step in because the child wasn't able to do the work autonomously. So this is another data point that I think is really important. We didn't do that many. We wanted it to be forward thinking, most of our survey, but this does give us a little glimpse into the spring. And so we asked our families the challenges that they face to our family members in supporting their child learning at home. The item, and they could check more than one, so they could check several that apply to supporting their child. The one that got the highest percentage, 42%, was the difficulty understanding assignments, was the highest. You can also see navigating Schoology, which tells us where we need to be working to support our families in navigating Schoology. But we do have 1 out of 3 families, if you look at the very bottom, 1 out of 3 that said they didn't face any challenges in supporting their child. So 1 out of 3 parents said none of these applied to them related to remote learning. And again, just good information for us to have. So this is one, so it's asking our parents and staff, and it's comparing side by side. So you can see there, 10% of staff think that we should open as close to as normal as possible, and 8% of parents. But when you look down at the bottom, there is perceptions of should schools be virtual online. This is going to the concerns around COVID-19. And you can see the 60% of our parents are saying that schools should be virtual online, as compared to 48% of staff. But as we look at our remote learning option, and that is to really be able to explain that option, and for our families to see that are looking for remote learning is going to be critically important for us to be sharing that information with them for those who do want remote learning next year. So we did give our families too this statement, and this goes to, should things return as soon as possible back to the way things were? And then this kind of reimagining, will education ever be the same? And so this school should be focused on rethinking, reimagining how we educate students. And you can see it's very similar, both our parents and staff, I think, understand that we are at a moment in time where the way we educate our students may never be the same, and we need to rethink that in light of COVID-19, but it also gives us a glimpse that people understand that COVID-19 might not go away for a while, and that we really need to have a plan to reimagine the way we educate students. So this is one that we definitely want to look at really close. We do as I mentioned, our staff survey is confidential. We do not and we will not break down that data at the individual staff member. At the student, though, we did send these as unique surveys to their family because we did ask some technology questions and we want that information so we can support the family. So we did the surveys 2 different ways. But on this question, it's a really powerful question for us because you can see here, 1 out of 4 families are saying that they're evaluating other education opportunities. So tonight, in our kickoff tonight, with the options that are available to our students, we need to do a really good job of communicating and sharing that information with them, and also giving our schools the breakdown of their students who reside in this 24%, so they can do some warm outreach to these families and talk about the options that we have available here in spring. So this was a question, we did have several questions within the survey that were only answered targeted to teachers. So you can see here the high percentage of teachers of our overall staff members. So of the total staff survey that participated and returned the survey, 64% of the responses from the staff side you're seeing represent teachers. And we did ask a question about teachers who are at higher risk from COVID-19. Should they be given first consideration for remote teaching assignments? And overwhelmingly, our teachers support that their fellow teachers that are at high risk for COVID-19 are given first consideration for those teaching assignments. And we thought that was an important item to test as we start to look at our staffing models for next year. This was one, and we're going to talk about our alternating day schedule. This was another item that we were testing. I thought this would come out with the family alpha grouping. So as we look at alternating days and trying to reduce the number of students on a campus at any one time, means we have to divide up the student population for the alternating days. And the family alpha grouping means that members of the same family would go to school on the same day. We did see this grade level grouping, and we had some conversations earlier on with our team members, our planning team members, and we have some ideas that this may be, we're going to look at it by school level. We may have some boyfriend, girlfriends that want to go to school on the same day and don't have, or not, wouldn't be alpha grouped together, are close friends and stuff like that. So we want to look at this and see if there's a difference in the alpha grouping and the grade level grouping that perhaps may be at school level. And that's a next step that we're going to be doing as well as we look at the need to do alternating days, but wanting to do the grouping in a way that is supported by our community. This is a lot of information on the slide, and I know you have it in your binder. There's a couple of items that I just want to mention here. I know you can read through. I do want to mention the second item that scored really well. Our school schedule planning team recommended that we go to remote learning on Wednesdays so that campuses can be deep cleaned. We tested it in the survey, and you can see here, it got a very favorable response from both parents and staff. So that's a really good feedback for us. As we looked at that Wednesday, you know, would our community be supportive of that? And they are very supportive of that. You can also see here the last one. And again, I'm not going to go through all of them, but we did ask the question about face coverings, and you can see, which is really happy to see, but our community is very supportive of face coverings as a safety measure for everyone on our campuses. So I talked about that question that we had at the beginning. And if you remember, there was this uncomfortable, and we moved that from 60, you can see it's at the bottom here. So it's 42% of parents at the very end of the survey, after we talked with them about our alternating days, after we talked about all the kind of measures we're wanting to put into place. When you look at this, very comfortable or somewhat comfortable, this actually, we were at 60% earlier on, and then we got that, we moved people over to either to the unsure and to the somewhat comfortable or very comfortable. And so that's just in the survey and the explanation we did on the things that are planned for the upcoming year. We saw some parents by the end of the survey get more comfortable with looking at our hybrid model for coming back to school, which I think is a good thing and shows that we need to do more and be communicating more as we roll out our plans this week and all through July. So overview of our 2020-21 learning options. So coming out of the planning teams, there's this one slide is going to kind of encapsulate where we're headed. And I'm going to go ahead and show this slide is that we're looking at two options and communicating to our family these two solid options for 2021 offerings for their students. And the first one is we're calling our Safety First hybrid model. And our option 2 is our Empowered Learning at Home model. And we'll talk a little bit more about our Empowered Learning at Home. I know we had the Empowered Learning at Home this past spring. We're going to talk about that and the work being done to strengthen it. It's been done some this summer, but even more so for the fall. So we have these two options, but both options, and something really important that we want to, as a community, communicate and make sure our parents know, is if you choose the hybrid model, the Safety First hybrid model, which has in-person and remote instruction, we want you to know that you have the full suite of district support, but you also have that if you're in Empowered Learning. So if you look at both of these, we want our families to know whether you choose the remote option, the Empowered Learning at Home, or you choose the hybrid, you're going to be able to participate in co-curricular activities. You're going to have the full suite of district student and family supports. You're going to have the standard-based curriculum with PBL experiences woven in, and you're going to have the synchronous and asynchronous learning. And so we want our families to understand that both of these options gives them these items, particularly the full suite of districts student and family supports is a critical one that we want them to understand. Just because they're choosing remote doesn't mean that they don't have these important items for their student available to them. So I'm going to I talked a little bit at the beginning about this little bit of a pivot that we did in our scenario-based work, and I'm going to jump right into that. So again, reminding we had those 4 scenarios. Scenario 3 in some ways kind of got resolved with our calendar, and our calendar is designed to really kind of have those rolling closures and to plan for those rolling closures. But what we also started to see was, you know, we could be in significant social distancing, and as a community, the COVID-19 contagion increases, and we need to go more remote. And we moved to kind of scenario 4, which is more remote and having that remote learning and meeting all those requirements. Or we could be in scenario 4, as all of you know, here in Harris County, was elevated to the level 1, the red risk. And so, you know, stay at home orders and things could improve, and then we could move. And we really wanted to have a model, as you can see here on the bottom, is really looking about how would we move from scenario to scenario, and how would we do this in a consistent way that our community could understand how we were making decisions. And so that's what I'm going to share with you is that work. So as we're doing this work, Harris County, Judge Hidalgo came out with what Harris County is calling their threat assessment meter. And as we were looking at it, it provided a nice, clear way. And we were thinking, what can we develop? But then we would be developing something that maybe the language was different or looked different. And so what we decided to do was to actually look at the Harris County threat assessment and say, but how would this work for us to use to communicate with our family on how we're going to make operational decisions when we need to pull back a little bit on in-person and go a little bit more remote to reduce the number of students on campus, and vice versa, when maybe we're remote and it's safe enough to come back and start to offer that in-person instruction for so many of that's so important to many of our students. So as we looked at that, we started to look at how scenario 2 we could be more nuanced in. And so kind of scenario 1 for us, remember, minimum social distancing. Scenario 2, significant social distancing, but the levels that could perhaps be in there. And then of course, that level red is when there is spread in the community. So I want to walk through, this is what we've designed to explain this to our families and to use this as we're calling it our operational decision meter. It's long, but I think you're going to see, I'm going to walk through really quickly and how this helps us all be talking from the same place. And I do want to just, this is on the slide that was the intro slide. It has a little blurb there that says, this is aligned with our local authorities but it's also unique to Spring. And we want to be clear that in Harris County, maybe Harris County is in the yellow or orange, but if we had an outbreak of COVID-19 in the district, or in a particular zip code in the district, or a particular area of the district, we could actually, this is designed for us to use to have conversations with our families to communicate how we're making decisions on either pulling back from in person and moving a little bit more remote for safety purposes, or vice versa. So when you look at this slide, at the bottom, we pulled the language, the descriptors from Harris County, which our local health authorities helped them develop this. And so we're borrowing from theirs, but we're then articulating it and putting, what does this mean for a school district? What does this mean for Spring? So red signifies, again, coming from the Harris County threat assessment, severe and uncontrolled level of COVID-19. Outbreaks are present and worsening, and the instruction to minimize contact with others. So for us, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this when we get into, in the red, the majority of students move to remote learning until COVID-19 threat level improves. We are putting in here, we know that some of our most vulnerable students, and even in an environment like we're in right now with COVID-19, I think across our planning teams, there was a strong drive for small group instruction with very strict social distancing protocols that we could still be bringing in some of our students who need that in-person instruction. So in the orange, again, the bottom is coming from our partners with Harris County, significant and uncontrolled level of COVID-19. The instructions are to minimize contact with others and avoid medium or large gatherings. For us, as we look at the in-person versus remote, we would move to alternating day schedule for students in grades 3 through 12 and a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday schedule for students in grade pre-K through 2, again with those Wednesdays for deep cleaning. Yellow, we would move to an alternating day schedule. This again, moderate but controlled. COVID-19 is still in our community, and the directions are to remain vigilant. We would open up to more students in person, having that Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday schedule for elementary. Our secondary, though, would remain on those alternating day schedules. And if our community was able to be in the green, Harris County in the green, which I think we would all love to see, that is that minimum and controlled level of COVID-19 in our community, you know, and it is basically advising residents to resume normal contact. That means that we still have COVID-19 in our community, but it is, we would try to go back to Monday, Thursday, Friday schedule for all students. And so by developing this, we're hoping to have a way of communicating with our families, for us all to be on the same page too, on how we make decisions related to the mix of in-person and remote that we're offering for those families who want that hybrid model as one of our true options. So I'm going to turn the floor over now. And so we're going to kick off, and the next probably, I think it's 7 to 10 slides, is actually the team leads of our planning teams. And for the first couple of slides, because they're very precise to our operational decision meter, they're going to be aligned that way. And then we're going to talk about some really important, those strong consensus points that go across all our scenario. And with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Diaca Melendez, the Spring High School principal.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I don't know if you can see me. I'm not able to, if Jeremy, you could undo the video so that I can be seen. Okay, awesome. Okay, so good evening to President Newhouse, Dr. Watson, and the members of the board. I am pleased to discuss the school schedules and class configuration slide with you this evening. And before I get into the specifics of the slide, I just want to kind of give you a background about the work that we did. So first of all, we wanted to make sure that this work would allow us to meet the needs of our community, our staff, our students, and our parents. And we were very thoughtful in that process as we were coming to some recommendations. But we also wanted to be innovative, and we wanted to reimagine. We know that in public education, we don't often have the opportunity to kind of just think outside the box and really step back and think about, okay, what were the things that we were doing that were effective, but how can we take this opportunity and reimagine moving forward so that we are truly taking this opportunity to embrace all the possibilities and outcomes for Spring ISD. And then that we had teacher feedback, so that everything that you're seeing, that there was a group of teachers behind the scenes that we were vetting these ideas with, discussing possible outcomes, you know, the ups and the downs. And so that this wasn't just something led by campus administration or central office, and we didn't have our boots on the ground feedback from our staff members. But at the end of the day, we were always rooted in what's best for the students. And so what you see on the screen is, as Tiffany shared with you, in the scenario where we're in green, all students in the best case scenario are on our campuses Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and that we are going to have online learning on Wednesday so that our campuses can be deep clean. This allows the students to come to school for 2 days, deep clean. You come to school again for 2 days, deep clean. And this really allows us, especially in our environment where, you know, the secondary schools where you have thousands of kids, to really get in there and deep clean and kind of have that reset twice a week. In the scenario yellow, our elementary students would be coming to school each and every day, except Wednesday, where once again, you're having that deep clean. But now, as we have to reduce the number of students that potentially are on campus, obviously the older kids are a little bit more likely to be self-managed. So secondary students would be on an alternating day schedule. And then your classroom occupancy would be reduced by 50%. In a scenario orange, we thought about if there was a group of students in the community that we thought were vital to be on the campus, it would be our youngest kids in pre-K through 2. When you think about phonics or reading or just those developmental skills that are so necessary to your education later on, the pre-K through 2 students would be the group that we would try to bring on campus. The same thing, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then grades 3 through 12 at that point would be on an alternating day schedule. And that once again allows us to reduce it by 50% and actually even more on some of the campuses. And then if we find ourselves in a scenario where we are simply just not able to hold school face-to-face for the majority of our students, that would be our red scenario. And that's where we would do the majority of our students who would be participating in remote learning. The rest of the presentation will talk about the specifics of what that will look like and what that plan is. But we also are proposing that the high school change their bell schedule to a block schedule. Right now we're running an 8-period 45-minute day. And so the alternating block schedule will allow fewer transitions so that we can release kids in zones. Middle school would remain on a 7-period schedule because they felt those touch points were critical for those students. And as we know, we did a lot of work this year with our middle schools, and we want to keep that work and momentum going. And then potentially having staggered arrivals, dismissals, and transitions at the elementary level. So this is our proposal, and we definitely think that we have the buy-in from our staff, and obviously based on the survey, we seem to have the pulse of the community who seems to be embracing the concept of being off on Wednesday. So thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you, Ms. Melendez. Thank you very much. We're going to move over to transportation now and to Jack Mann, the Director of Transportation.
Good evening, President Newhouse, Dr. Watson, and members of the board. The Transportation Committee was focused primarily on finding ways that we could continue to provide as close to the normal level of service to our students in support of them in their in-person learning. As we thought through the different scenarios, we had to figure out how we could manage social distancing in the confined space of a bus. And so we discussed within the industry, we discussed with our team had principals and other district leaders that gave great insight. In the green area, we suspect that if we are in the minimal social distancing time with everyone wearing masks, we could manage maximum of 2 students per seat. But as the social distancing needs increase, we would then need to modify how we transported students. So as we got into the yellow and to reduce the student load, In the yellow and orange, we would only allow one student per seat on the bus. And then finally, when we got into the red, as we would be bringing students in for some of these smaller groups, we would still need to maintain some social distancing as best as possible. And so the determination was one student maximum per row, which would give us the best possibility of social distancing. A couple of other points of how it would function on the bus. The recommendation would be to load students as we go to a bus stop. The first student on the bus goes to the very back of the bus and we load back to front and then empty the bus front to back so there's minimal passing of students, etc. We also would be creating specific routes for co-curricular activities so that we can make sure that students who are not currently in-person classes, they would not miss out on those enrichment activities. It's so important. We would also place hand sanitizers on every bus with the expectation that students and staff would be expected to use it as they boarded and exited. Also, buses would be disinfected each time we drop students, but then at the end of each route, we would go back through and do a thorough sanitization of the bus. And again, as I mentioned before, we recommend that masks be required as educationally appropriate. Some of the younger students or students with special needs, that may be somewhat challenging for them, and so we would work with them. The last two things are basically seats would be clearly marked. Depending upon the level of social distancing, we would mark the seats so it would be very clear to the students as they boarded the bus which seats would be available to them to use. And then we would also lower some windows to allow for appropriate ventilation to, weather permitting, to also reduce the risk of infection. In our next slide, I created a diagram to show you what in levels of the orange and the yellow, what one student per seat would look like. Students would sit at the side by the windows to maximize the amount of space between students. And that would give us approximately 26 students per bus during that time, a significant reduction. The next slide shows what it would look like if we're in the level red, which would be one student passenger per row. And that would give us almost 6 foot of distance between students. So I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it. So the next item we want to get into, and this is the last, so there's a little wrap up at the very end, but I just want to tell a little funny story. When we were doing the scenario, we had this great template that Lupita and our special projects team, and they everybody was supposed to fill in based on the scenario, what would you do differently? And we got some of our templates back and people were like, well, I would do this the same across all the scenarios. And so we actually set up a meeting to talk with one of the planning teams. And we said, we need you to differentiate what you're going to do. And half an hour into the meeting, I realized that their plan was really solid. And what the point, and again, that pivot was, is that we're moving to this new environment, with remote learning as part of all of the modeling for next year, for 2021, whether families are participating in the hybrid with those Wednesdays off, even in the green, but there's this remote learning component. And so some of the items that were coming out from our planning teams was like, no, we just have to do this and it's going to apply across. This is a big lift, or this is a big change for the district, but it needs to be done and it's really going to apply across the scenarios. So with that, we divided our presentation and you saw the pieces that Ms. Melendez and Jack Mann presented related to those areas that are very different, and that social distancing piece that by scenario, but there's some key pieces that are just really stakes in the ground as a district that we're putting in place to meet the needs of our students and of our staff as we head into this new environment in 2021. And the first slide, of course, is critically important, its instruction, and it'll be presented by Melissa Warford, principal of McNabb Elementary.
Good evening, distinguished board members, Dr. Watson, and the members of the cabinet. First, I want to take a moment to thank Dr. Watson for providing me the opportunity to be the team leader on instruction. Instruction is truly a passion of mine, and this process has been extremely rewarding. As we know from this experience with COVID-19, instruction for all our students is more critical than ever before. As a parent of a Spring ISD student, and also as a principal of a campus that is moving in a wonderful direction, we don't want to slow down that momentum for any of our campuses in any way. Instruction for this time period has given us the opportunity to pause and reflect on some hard questions about the instruction that we offer students. We began our work by speaking to parents, students, and teachers about the instruction that we offered during our spring semester. The feedback that we received guided our team's work. Of course, we also reviewed the guidance from TEA, which states that moving forward, we have to ensure that all of our students are being instructed with the TEKS. As we know, the Springway is to teach the TEKS to the highest caliber, and this instructional plan calls for a consistent plan, regardless of the parent's learning preference for the student or the current level of COVID-19 in the community. As Ms. Westbrooks alluded to earlier during our instruction, our plan begins across the board, both in in-person and virtual learning environments. We will follow the Spring ISD scope and sequence, and the instructional framework will be utilized. We already know that we have an instructional scope and sequence that is solid, and we have an instructional framework that is providing our students the highest caliber of learning. In order to marry the two, the hybrid version and the remote learning, we will follow Schoology as the unifying connector between our in-person and our virtual learning. Our courses, our scope and sequence, our it will be standards-based instruction, and it will include an aligned assessment. We really want to emphasize to our parents, to our community members, and to our teachers that what we provide students in Schoology will mirror the same high caliber, high quality instruction that they would receive even if they were when they are inside the classroom. That is the most important piece that we want to make sure to communicate to all of our stakeholders. We will also continue to utilize project-based learning as it can be incorporated in various ways, and it allows students the mastery of content using a variety of mediums. So we also have the opportunity to allow our students to show us through a variety of ways what they have learned through their teachers' great instruction that they are providing, whether or not it is in person or virtual. So this begins our instructional work. And I'm going to turn it over to my other co-presenters to talk about instructional technology and supports.
We're going to move on to the student supports. And I will, this is a wonderful micro plan, and I encourage the board to look at this micro plan as well as the next two micro plans. that combined is that student learning plan for 2021. And the next slide is going to be presented by Tiffany Weston, our principal of Jenkins Elementary.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Watson, and cabinet members. Our collaborative student support group was a lively and passionate group. We knew we had to ensure that our special populations received individual support to meet their needs, whether on campus or in remote learning. Knowing that some may need certain accommodations, language supports, academic or emotional support, we solicited input from people around the district who work with our most students every day. Their input helped us to create some recommendations that were within the laws protecting our special populations. We also held daily collaborative sessions with the instructional technology and instruction teams. Our discussions focused on technology needs to access learning, mental health, the impact of the pandemic, language supports, and meeting individual academic and basic needs. Within our micro plan, we recommended specific items to address the needs of our special populations, such as appropriate devices and internet access, one-to-one instruction, and various instruction delivery models based on their individual needs to increase content mastery, language supports, which could look like language labs, support from paraprofessionals, or small group instruction from teachers. Training of all staff in trauma-informed care to address the mental health of students and awareness of the indicators of COVID-19 stressors. Accommodation tools for face-to-face and remote learning that are embedded in the instructional plans. Finally, we recommended mentoring and monitoring programs to discuss students' progress and provide immediate support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weston. And for our last piece of the student learning plan puzzle, I'm going to turn over the floor to another principal. I'm going to turn over the floor to Angeles Perez, the principal of Reynolds Elementary.
Good evening, Dr. Watson, members of the board and cabinet. I had the privilege of serving as the leader of the instructional technology team with Mr. Kevin Holliday. We had an incredible team that was able to create the instructional technology microplan you have before you tonight. Our work primarily centered on lessons learned from the spring semester and considerations for next year as it relates to instructional technology. Instructional technology will be essential to the delivery of instruction as outlined moments before me by my colleague, Ms. Warford. As it relates to instructional technology, we determined it was crucial to continue providing devices for all of our scholars in grades 3 and up. It will also be important to tighten our device checkout procedures and ensure that the message regarding our remote learning is clear and that we are no longer operating on an opt-in basis. In response to our survey data, the district is preparing to distribute hotspots as available to families unable to connect. Schoology will continue to be our learning management system and will be the hub for synchronous and asynchronous learning. Lastly, technology support teams will be developed at both the campus and district level in order to support families, students, and staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. We're going to go on now to staffing and to professional development and the plans for both those areas. And again, I encourage you to read the full micro plans that are in your binder for our board members. And I'm going to pass over to staffing to Dr. Andrea Schur of Wanchee High School.
Good evening, board trustees and Dr. Watson. First and foremost, I know Pam David and I want to say thank you so much to, under Dr. Watson's leadership and cabinet, for truly building such robust teams that we were able to work with that can, not just at the district department, but at every campus level from elementary, middle school, and high school. So when we were able to come together and really look at what our staffing plan needed to include and all the different considerations, and as we started to comb through the obstacles, there were two big filters that we wanted to make sure that we ensured. And one was that we were going to be able to staff in a way that could consistently provide rigorous instruction for our students. We wanted quality, rigorous instruction for our kids to ensure that they stayed on track. And then the second piece, just like the survey said, is we wanted to make sure that we supported our staff, our high-risk staff, and that we were able to give them priority, as well as ensuring whatever the transition, whatever scenario we were in, that we were able to provide the supports needed to all staff members, that they could be a contributing member for the ongoing success for spring. So in looking at that, we essentially had three big buckets that we were proposing, and that is, when possible, that remote instruction would be delivered from the classroom setting. This allows us to provide our teachers access to the instructional materials and resources to be able to provide that quality instruction. We also looked at, as mentioned previously, that our staff are high risk from COVID-19 should be given first consideration for remote teaching assignments. But with that, also partnering them with teachers that were demonstrating high quality remote teaching skills needed to be identified so that their reach can be extended to both students and staff. So whether they were at home or whether they were on campus, we want to make sure that we're able to maintain that quality instruction and also extend our high quality teacher reach and possibly having partners up as we transition, if we had to, go into the red zone so that we can continue to provide that instruction. And with those pieces comes also the PD, and how do we give everybody their new kind of roles and responsibilities to be able to accomplish that task. And so I will turn it to now PD, to our partnering staff member, Diana Kimberly.
Diana?
Good evening, Dr. Watson, President Newhouse, Board of Trustees, and Cabinet members. I know that I speak for the professional development team, myself and Kanisha Williams, and thanking you for trusting us to do this work. As we began this work, we definitely went off the recommendations of the instructional technology, and student support teams and their recommendations. And we also knew that we didn't want to just focus on the 9 members of this team. We did reach out to our different supports with our teachers, our peers, our principals, our support staffs to get some ideas on what they think we needed for professional development. We know that as we move into this remote environment, we definitely need strong professional development to ensure that teachers and classroom paraprofessionals are provided the tools and skills needed to be successful in 2020 and 2021. The very top thing that we spoke about was Schoology. We know that all of our instruction will focus around Schoology, and we know that we need to provide different trainings in Schoology, differentiating by different proficiency levels and also grade levels for teachers. We also want to provide training on grading and attendance, and also eStar. We want to be sure that we're providing all of our special education teachers that are holding ARDS remotely the training they need to ensure that we're meeting all of the expectations in our ARDS and our signing of documents to make sure that we're meeting our students with accommodations needs. We are following our standards-based scope and sequence, making sure our teachers understand that and what they need for that piece. Also, our SEL and PBIS. SEL is our social emotional learning. We know that this COVID pandemic has definitely affected so many people in different ways, and we want to support that, as well as our positive behavior interventions and supports with our behaviors. We want to build on skills for planning for hybrid teaching, reporting, grading, and attendance, accommodations for our special populations, building upon our Springway systems and routines, and our flipped classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kimberly. We're going to move on now to Letty Gonzalez, who will be presenting the family supports. And again, this is an area that we're reimagining as our students, many of them in the spring working from home. We learned a lot, and Letty's going to talk with you about some of the strong plans for this area.
Thank you, Tiffany. Good evening, President Newhouse, members of the board, Dr. Watson, and Cabinet. I'm going to share a big picture of the work and thoughts of our family supports team. Dr. Berke Hernandez and I had the pleasure of leading this committee, and we do want to thank you for the opportunity to dig into the work and impact our district next year. So the slide that you're seeing captures the main topic of our discussions, which were centered around how can we best support our parents to help their children be successful. First and foremost, the team strongly believes that we must address our multilingual families and be prepared to provide support in our 3 main languages, English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. We also recommend that assistance for parents be provided in both digital and non-digital formats in the following 3 areas. Technical support. We are recommending a multilingual help desk. We're recommending that we provide parents technical support as far as how to navigate through Schoology and how to navigate through the different tools on the website that they have available to them. We also want to provide academic support. We want our parents to have access to online videos that support instruction. And we want to ensure that all parents are aware of this tool, especially the parents of our students in special programs. And we also want to focus on social emotional support. This will allow, we can enhance access to our counselors, our KAIS workers, and we want to look at presenting virtual parent workshops in this area. Now, to arrive at our recommendations, our team held productive discussions and we focused on data. We looked at parent survey results and we did conduct informal interviews. For example, we spoke with an individual who has 1 child participating in K-12 Home Connect and her other child attends Spring ISD. So her information was invaluable. We gained a very different perspective into what we can offer in our district. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. We're going to go, and I just want to pause right before I introduce this slide and just a huge shout out to our child nutrition department. Their micro plan is really strong for next year. And, you know, we all know that they were on the front lines during the spring, making sure that our students had healthy meals. And so just a huge shout out to this department. And I'm going to turn the floor over to the Director of Child Nutrition, Shelley Copeland, so that she can talk through her plan, but please look at the micro plan too as well.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. And I must say our staff was very excited and happy to be working and serving our students and community. Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Watson and Cabinet. And I'm very pleased that I've been able to participate in the planning scenario planning committee and work alongside co-leader Cynthia Gomez. We took a look at a lot of possibilities for school meals next year. And as you know, much of what we do is regulated by the USDA. And I'm happy to tell you that the USDA has extended all of the waivers for flexibility so that we can serve our students in a much better method as we move into the fall. These waivers are extended through June 2021. And while I won't cover all of the waivers this evening, there are two that I do want to mention. The first waiver I'll mention is the ability to offer curbside meal service, which will be much like what we have been doing since March. And the second waiver that is very important to us is the ability to adjust meal times as needed. And this would be the ability to adjust meal times outside of the normal 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. time frame, which sometimes is a challenge for us. And it could be a challenge as we have the need for social distancing and spacing students who do come through the cafeteria. Both of these waivers, as well as others, will increase our flexibility with meal service this next year. We do plan to offer meals Monday through Friday. And this schedule for school meals, especially for lunch, could look different at every campus. We will be working with campus administrators to determine the needs of the campus, what it will look like for them and work best for them, and looking at social distancing by campus and how that will affect them and their schedules. We'll also be looking at what we will need to do in order for our staff to be able to prepare and serve those meals across the campus. And most likely each campus will be taking advantage of a variety of serving methods, including meals served in the cafeteria, grab-and-go meals that can be taken to the classroom, meals delivered to the classroom, and curbside meals for our students who are choosing the virtual learning option. Our committee members did an outstanding job of including feedback from their colleagues in all of our discussions. They have developed sample lunch schedules for a reference for principals and also providing them ideas on how to have classroom coverage and coverage in the cafeteria. These are included in the micro plan that you received. And thank you all very much, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, Shelley. And this is the last area that we're going to be presenting of these strong consensus items. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Gary Hutton, our Executive Director of Planning and Construction. Do we have Gary with us? Jeremy, do you know if Gary is in the meeting? I can't see anything with my presentation up.
He shows that he's in the meeting. Gary, are you there? He doesn't appear to be muted either. We heard him earlier when he joined. I see him. He dropped his headset.
Okay, we'll give him a second. If not, I don't know if Keisha Womack. Keisha Womack was the other team lead.
Can you hear me now?
We can
Yes.
hear you now.
Hi, Gary.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
let me start again. Good evening, President Newhouse, members of the board, Dr. Watson and Cabinet. The facilities team, led by Ms. Womack and myself, took up the challenge of facilities and came up with the following primary points to be operationalized and expanded. First is the establishing of safety policies and protocols for all facilities to ensure a healthy and safe environment and to ensure a minimum social distancing, or later on, more intense social distancing as required. These policies and protocols need to be consistent across the district, but be flexible enough to adapt to changing guidelines and recommendations from state, local, and federal agencies. In addition, daily cleaning and regular deep cleaning procedures have been developed in accordance with CDC guidelines. Deep cleaning and sanitizing rooms and infrastructure would be required after confirmed case of exposure in facilities. The procedures for deep cleaning and sanitizing are in place and have been used as cases are reported to the operations team. These procedures will be expanded to meet the evolving guidance from CDC, TEA, and other agencies. One of the team's longest and most controversial conversations revolved around universal signage. All facilities outlining the policies and procedures for face masks, social distancing, hand washing, sanitizing, directional signage, and to help inform all visitors and staff of the requirements. Although universal, these may look different at grade levels and will be modified to work for facilities like the stadium and the Gordon Anderson building. Some of the other items we continue to evolve are the review of common areas to ensure safe environment complying with CDC guidelines. Common areas would be included restrooms and labs, drinking fountains. We've talked about installing plexiglass screens at high touch points such as cafeteria cashiers, reception desk, and other points. Providing bottle filling stations where possible if drinking fountains have to be shut down due to guidance. Limiting campus visits. Wherever possible, remote learning should be meeting software should be used. Building rentals will need to be evaluated to ensure ongoing facility safety and sanitization. Lastly, staffing guidelines for operations and nursing should be adjusted to allow for appropriate responses to the challenges of COVID-19. Thank you for allowing us to present tonight.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. So we're coming up to our last section of the presentation. I know it's a lot of information, and I did just want to go back. Is one of the important things that's coming out of this meeting and the strong recommendations and the strong work and the strong plans ready to be operationalized is to start communicating with our families about the two options that are available to them and what the options mean. And so I did want to go back to this. We are calling our option safety first, hybrid model. We're pleased with our operational decision meter as it really kind of guides our work next year and guides the way that as a community, we can watch together and make good decisions about the mix of in-person and remote learning as needed in response to COVID-19 levels in our community. And so that option, the hybrid option, you can see we're trying to be as flexible as possible. We love our students. We want our students in our classrooms as much as possible. And our staffers absolutely, and our teachers say that too as well, but we all want to do it in the safest way possible for everyone. And so that option, and then our empowered learning at home option, so that our families that do want to keep their students home, as you heard from Melissa Warford, as you heard from the Tiffany Weston and Angeles Perez, as they talk through that student learning plan, is having a really strong student learning plan, of course, being led by our Chief Academic Officer, Kachara Bradford, but having that in place, and that plan is for both of our options. But wanting them to know also the things that are included in that, always again, based on what's safe at any one time as we head into 2021, but wanting our families to know, particularly in that upper right-hand corner, is that whether they choose the hybrid option or they choose the learning at home option, our full suite of district support, student and family supports is available to them where possible. For those students that those extracurricular activities mean a lot, their choice of the hybrid and remote doesn't preclude them from participating in that. And then also making sure that our families know that the standards-based curriculum with those PBL experience, the synchronous and asynchronous. We're going to start communicating this. Our website related to our 2 options will go live on Thursday morning. We are going to message our families about tonight and some key elements from the presentation, but to really provide our full website information, FAQs for our families. We will be sending out a reservation form to our families, but we want to give them some time to look at the options, to learn about the options, and to think as a family and to have those discussions, which option is best for them. And so we'll be letting that reservation form go out to them in mid-July to start to get information on where our families are feeling, which option they want to take advantage of next year. And so the last part of the presentation, you saw those 5 micro plans that we've been working on. Our team leads and our team members are going to stay in the work. They're going to be consulted in the work, but the operational lizing of those plans, taking those plans and they're really rolling up the sleeves and working on all those micro plans that are in your binder. We have chosen some leaders at the district level to take those micro plans and operationalize them and get ready for the start of the school year. And with that, their names are listed here. And that concludes the presentation. I know it was a long presentation. I hope you can see that the effort from the 100 people that participated, team members were very, very active, and the team leads that presented today, but team members were as active in presenting in the sessions too as well, and bringing a lot of good work to the teams and the discussions, and they're all included in your binder. And so I just want to a huge shout out to all the teams, to my partner in this work, Dr. Lupita Hinojosa, and the special projects team, Christian Nguyen, Dion McKeithen, and Letty Gonzalez, who did also a lot of heavy lifting to coordinate all the teams and their meetings. So that concludes my presentation. And if you have any questions, I'll hold it up for a second. If not, I'll stop sharing and I can answer any questions that way, or I could pivot back to a slide if you have a question out about a specific slide. Then I will stop sharing, so I don't have to keep looking at a slide up in front of me. I can't see anybody's face. But if you have any questions, I know that our team leads are here, but a particular presentation or part of the presentation you have a question on, I know they're here too and can answer questions. And Dr. Hinojosa is here, and Mark has been very involved. The entire cabinet has been incredibly involved as facilitators in these meetings as well.
So I wanted to let me the excellent presentation. I think definitely a lot of work went into this in a very short period, and thank you all so much for all of the detail. And I just have 2 quick questions, because I know my colleagues probably have a lot to ask, so I wanted to get this out. How does TA define trauma-informed care? And I also wanted to know if you could expound briefly on the one-to-one, where you talked about one-to-one teaching or instruction as it relates to SPED 504 and the other special services that we offer.
Okay. For the trauma.
Sure.
Go ahead, Tiffany, these are for you. They're from your slide. I'm glad you jumped in. Yeah. I'll let Tiffany Weston go.
I'm not sure if Denise is on the line, but she could speak better to the trauma-informed care. And she was really helping us find PD to help all of our staff get that training. But as far as the one-to-one, what we found was throughout the remote learning period over the last, we had teachers, carers who would take the time to get on Google Hangouts and have special sessions with the kids, just one-on-one or small group, to provide that additional support that they needed, whether it was ARDIT or a part of their LPAC or not. So we talked about using the different support staff that we have on our campuses is different from elementary to high school to provide it as needed. Everybody might not need that one-to-one, but if they do need it and we can find a way to provide it, that's what we would like to do for them.
Right. So our director.
So will one.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, go ahead, Tiffany. You can go ahead. You were asking a question. No, I was just going to jump and get the next question answered, but if you have another question for Ms. Weston, please proceed. I did. As it relates to, well, I'm asking this because I know with special ed, I was wondering if any thought has been given to providing and offering that one-on-one. And I asked that because I know it was a challenge for me working with a special ed student, just helping with the homework. So now we're talking about doing the virtual learning. Just wanted to, I'm sure you all have thought about it, but I'd like to see more about that. And if it's in here, if you can direct me to. So in the presentation, in the micro plan for student support, there's more information on our plan for our special. You don't have to spend a lot of time on it, just, okay. I am going to see Dr. Hinojosa. I know that some people are not on as panelists, so they're not able to speak. I know they're on the call, but Dr. Hinojosa, I know, has a really strong background in this area and might be able to answer that question too as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Dunn-Oakfield. And yes, Ms. Hodges, if you, you'll get an overview in the micro plans. The team did describe some of the plans there. We will be moving to operationalize this part of the work, but do know that through special education, specifically if the students are identified as special ed, our responsibility is to provide that one-on-one support, even if they're working remotely. So if a student qualifies and needs, we are prepared to offer the teletherapy for the students, as well as if they are scheduled to receive homebound instruction. Our instructors are prepared, using, of course, the PPE, the face shields and things like that, to be able to go into the homes and provide that instruction. And then we also have software that can support the students through that one-on-one. Most importantly, for us to be able to go back into their IEPs and determine, spell out what it is that they need in order to get that individualized support if they're at home. We also, and I think you might have heard Dr. Sherb, a few of the leaders, team leads that presented, we are prepared to offer some small group instruction, prioritizing the students that have the need, of course, with the parents' permission to allow them to come into the classrooms, into school, to provide that small group instruction. Okay. But again, we will be operationalizing that. Okay. And one last question or comment. I know what I really want is to make sure instructors and the paras in each school to be able to support, because that was an issue that I ran into with my nephew at Reynolds Elementary, not getting the support that he needed because Ms. Hodges, you're breaking up. We're hearing fragments of your question. There were not enough parallel. Well, I'll type it into the box, but I just want to make sure that we're prepared to handle the special ed students that we might have, and not allow them to get left behind because we don't have the staffing to support them. I hope you all heard that.
Yes, we heard that.
Okay. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions for the panelists, the presenters from the presentation?
I have a question about the survey. This sample size, I want to poll everybody else, but this looks like a larger sample size or a larger response rate than we're used to seeing. Is that right? Did more folks, both teachers and parents, it seems like there's more of them.
Yeah, we get a pretty good response rate on our K-12, our 2 big surveys a year, but this is an incredible response rate for the short period of time that the survey's been open. And so right now, today, we even have more surveys. They're coming in. It's going to be left open a week, But the really nice thing related to the student survey, as I was mentioning, is that we can link it to the student, and it was addressed to the student. For those of you who got the link, it was addressed to you as a household, as a family, and a student. And so we're going to start reaching out to those families that we didn't hear from. But when you look at the survey, 30,693 emails. So it's really hard for us to say how many households we have in a district, because some families, you know, have 1 to 2 guardians listed and their contact information, and some families only have 1 and have multiple students attached to them. So, but we have, right now, we have 9,479 completed. So if you look at that, that's 1/3 of the emails, 30% of the emails, text message, the unique sends to participate. But if we look at about 22,000 of households, 22,000 to 25,000 households in the district, because many households have multiple students, it could even be higher percentage participation, getting in the 40s to 50% right now, but we are leaving it open. But I am making a call that we have 4,017 surveys that were started that are not part of that 9,000 completed. We knew it was a long survey, but they were all important questions to us. So a big call out to those families and staff that are in the process to go back in. They can pick up where they left off and complete the survey. But for our staff, it represents 62% of our staff have completed the survey, which is phenomenal, and it's still open, and we still want to hear their voice.
Excellent. So yeah, that's some good news on the community and the engagement piece that we were just talking about. So I had a potentially deeper question that maybe we could do offline about disaggregating this data around parents who reported that their children struggled with remote learning lessons. We had some of that in my household. And so I wondered if what we were doing to address those needs, and had we identified any particular trends that we think might be contributing to those struggles. And that's all my questions. I think it's a really good presentation. I'm going to take some time to go through the individual micro reports and formulate more questions both on those. I did have an observation about transportation's report. He talked about loading kids in order and then having them disembark the bus in reverse order to minimize contact and increase social distancing. And I'm not sure, I think that works going to school. I wondered about how that would work coming home when the kids just sort of get on the bus where they get on, if that makes any sense. But I think it was a really well done report, and I look forward to looking through the rest of this binder. Thank you, Ms. Dunn-Olford.
Thank you.
Mr. Adams.
You want to jump in by any chance? Did you?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and address that. Mr. Adams, that's a very valid point. Obviously, there's going to be some teaching of the students as the students get on the bus. The idea more than anything is having a plan so that we can train our staff to do it the right way, so that then we can train the students to do it the safest way. That is what the industry is looking to kind of everybody do. I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of directors throughout the nation, and that's what we're recommending. And we know there will be challenges, but very good observation.
Good evening, everyone. And I also want to echo my colleagues' comments. And then this is a lot of work that you all have done in pulling together what is a very robust plan to support our students as they return back to school. I had a couple of questions, and if they were asked and answered, my apologies, because there's a lot of information and it's late in the day and I've been on call since 7 a.m. But what are we doing just to ensure that parents understand those options and what those options mean? Because it's a lot of information, even for me to digest. And for parents to be able to make sure they understand what their options are. And as they submit those choices, if they find, say, halfway through that they want to adjust that or maybe move to the other option, are we allowing that flexibility? So one, I'm talking about communicating in ensuring that they understand so that they can make a very informed choice? And then are we allowing an opportunity for them to make an adjustment if they find that initial choice isn't supporting their student as best we would like for it to?
Yeah, those are great questions. And so as I was mentioning, we are going live with our website that's going to be talking about our options. We are communicating with our families right after the board meeting to get them the information and highlight the 2 options and to start to talk with them. We've communicated, and I know we share those communications with you about the scenario-based planning, but there's a lot of work ahead in July. As I was mentioning with the survey, when you looked at those families and their comfort level, it even shifted in the survey, because in the survey, we were giving them information. So how important that information is to making our families feel comfortable, both with the hybrid, the in-person, but also with the remote learning and what's going to be involved in the remote learning. So our initial website with our FAQ related to our options and our 2021 plan will kick off on Thursday. And it's a living, breathing website. So we were going to be updating it as we have information. We're going to be reaching out to our families. But I want to go back to the survey because Trustee Adams brought up something, was a really good point. The survey and the way we administered the survey allows us to understand which of our families, if you remember the pie chart that said the families, 24% were looking at other options, we can actually identify those families. We communicated with them that we were getting that individual data. We want to do some focus groups based on the data and to start to have some meetings. And Ms. Bradford and I talked about that too, as what related to some of the challenges families face. We can actually see the families that said that their student was challenged, and we'd like to hold some focus groups and to get some more information from them too as well. But as we work and we market, we're going to be working very closely with our schools. What you're seeing is the district level data, but the same data and breakdown that you're seeing at the district level, our campus is going to have. So they're going to know those families that are looking at other options. They're going to know which ones of those families so that they can make those warm phone calls and talk with the families about our options, right? And they can call them and say, hey, I know this survey, you said you're looking at other options. Can I talk with you about Spring ISD's options? Which I think is going to be hugely beneficial to the district. But we want to use the survey data to be very targeted in our outreach, have our broad outreach, put the information out there, but also have an outreach that's very individualized to the parents. And they took the time to respond to the survey, and we want to respond to them based on what they told us in the survey.
I, first of all, would like to give my compliments to all the teams that put these micro plans together. When I looked at the people who were on the teams, I feel like they were dream teams of people who really know their stuff. I had a question for Dr. Schur. I noticed that she was saying that their team were recommending putting in a adept teacher who is experienced with blended learning, virtual learning, with a teacher who may have a pre-existing condition who is going to be doing her instruction by virtual means. I just wondered, I certainly know that people know when they have a certain condition that's going to put them in that spot, but I wondered, how are they identifying the adept teachers?
So one of the things,
the superstars.
Yeah. So one of the things that we talked about, especially with the principals and with our other colleagues and things, that there are different certifications. One that we've already observed in some of our principals meetings, we've had the opportunity to see some really quality teachers that have been able to divide student groups up into tiers, and they go into other different groupings and doing co-teaching with their special ed teacher partner, what have you. So some of those already observable characteristics that we've seen that happen during this pandemic, the last 2 months of school, where they've really done some additional instruction for those kids that were struggling. The other piece is that we have like Schoology certification, we have Google certifications, and looking at some of those pieces and just being able to do tech tool, PD, A lot of the principals already have some teachers that had been doing some of those things that would come and model different tech tools and have kind of trained some of the other teachers. So those are kind of the qualities, and also the data. We have teachers that have very strong data that are great at motivating kids. Even throughout this pandemic, there were some teachers that led the way where we had kids that weren't logging in or getting the assignments done, and those other teachers started reaching out to them. So those qualities about motivating kids, being able to be creative in how they break down instruction online, just like a different manipulative. And so those are things that we kind of listed out in the characteristics in our microplan that you would see some of those pieces. And then we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves to say, okay, the teachers that are the high flyers are the ones that are on the campus, or the teachers that are the at-risk are the support teachers. It could go either way. The high flyers could be at home and they could be partnered up with the teacher that's on campus. It's a brand new teacher that's there, I guess that what I was saying, master teacher or really high flyer might have 200 kids, and that other teacher is the partner teacher to help with the grading, to help with the chats and the reminds and all of those pieces. So we looked at that piece, as well as also matching up with our peer support if we went to completely virtual, to where our peer support staff could be doing the attendance, that those high flyer teachers wouldn't have to be trying to do all the additional monitoring the chat group, monitoring the attendance, loading and scanning all the materials into it, turning the camera on and off and presenting. So some of those little nuances that are sometimes causing tech difficulties, that we train the paras or those support teachers and just start matching our staff, where it might start out with 25%, but it would be just as fluid if we had to go to 100% that were in the red zone, or 50%. So we really kind of broke down those three kind of categories between the high flyers, the high risk, as well as the para support, librarians, instructional specialists, and how the instructional specialists could do tier 2 and tier 3 intervention to kind of lend itself to the other conversation that was happening. So did that answer your question?
Thank you.
If I can just jump in, I didn't answer Trustee Durant's question, so I'm coming back to it, and I apologize. I got excited about the communication plan. So what we're discussing, and this is part of the work in July, but it's one of the big questions that we need to answer very quickly so that we can put that in our FAQ and communicate, is the families that change their mind. So you have these two options and wonder if I change, they change their mind, or that one option's not working for their student. We have seen other school districts come out, and what they're saying is that children can move to remote anytime during the year, but moving back to in-person would need to be done at a grading cycle change, because you're really trying to control the capacity on a campus. So several school districts we've seen do that, but we're asking the question, could we be a little bit more flexible? And that's one of the big questions that we need, because that's going to be a question from our family. If I choose this, then can I change my mind? And that is, we're also getting that queued up, because we are going to send out the reservation next week, which is starting next week, with asking our parents to provide that to us by the middle of July. So we want to have that question answered, but we are looking to see, can we be a little bit more flexible? But what we're seeing from other school districts is any family, based on concerns on what's going on in their community, could move to remote. And you heard Ms. Warford really describe about how they're working to make that seamless. Like even if we had to move as a school district to more remote, trying to be seamless, but if a child, for whatever reason, their family wanted them to move remote, that should be very seamless to do with what our instruction team is developing. But what we're going to need to look at is the operational piece. If a student is at home and has chosen the remote, how can we best onboard them back to in-person while keeping our levels on our campus at the appropriate levels for the social distancing required? So definitely have that on our mind and know that we need to answer it. So, because it's going to be one of the first questions that our parents ask. And I apologize for skipping that.
That's okay. Do we have some, and thank you for that information. And that makes sense, especially allowing them to be able to go remote as needed. That's going to be critical with the changing environment. And then do we have opportunities? I know we did a lot of training and provided training for parents, but is it possible to put together some sort of module or prototype for them to kind of get a feel for what those options are going to look like. I can oftentimes make a better decision. I'm more visual and hands-on than actually reading through it and making that choice. Is it a way to make it more real time for them in helping them make that choice?
I know Ms. Bradford's on the line. We'll take that as a takeaway. I think her team works really well with our comms team, but she has a wonderful team that really does a great job of explaining things to our parents. They did great work in the spring, and we will look at that so that they can really kind of feel the experience of what it's going to look like. So we'll work
something hands-on to help drive that choice would be helpful as well.
During the spring, what was really helpful for our family were the videos that you all produced on how to navigate Schoology and all the other platforms, because they are not intuitive. I'm not a complete computer idiot, but some of that stuff was confusing until I watched the video, and it helped me to figure it out.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about that, and then what are some of the changes you made in the summer that's going to lead into the fall and addressing Ms. Durant's questions?
Yes, so we definitely have gotten a lot of feedback from students, teachers, parents, administrators about our Empowered Learning 2.0. So some of the things that we started doing were just having webinars for families. We tried to pace them out so there'll be some in the morning, some around lunchtime, and then some offered in the evening, available in English and Spanish. And a lot of times parents would get on and just see how I clicked on something, or just watch me kind of talk through a document or a process, and they had that aha moment. So definitely allowing for them to have those engaging conversations. I know a lot of campuses also hosted little family, webinars or virtual meetings to, just to share with them and to kind of lower that, risk factor or fear factor of what was going on. And then also to Dr. Adams' comment about the videos, we're making lots more videos, and we're finding that for students, especially, they're used to going on YouTube and learning about anything practically. So just making little 2-minute, really informative educational videos that could either be the launch to an assignment or, to remind them to, remember this is how you submit here. So we have been doing that also during the summer. So one of the things we did was a lot of feedback that some students were just so self-directed. So it was like, okay, here's the lesson, go forth. And during the summer, we wrote lessons specifically that teachers were delivering to students that we had as part of our intervention lessons. So the students had their project-based learning plans, but then teachers had separate lessons where they were really going through all of those skills. And you heard the team talk about standards-based. I'm really focusing in on specifically math and reading, so that every day teachers were meeting with their students that are in the summer intervention program to provide them that face-to-face targeted instruction, so that it wasn't left up to parents and it wasn't left up to the student kind of navigating through that professional, that project-based learning plan. But we also created videos of the whole intervention lesson. So let's say the literacy intervention lesson for 3rd grade is about 30 minutes. We created ahead of time a full video of that intervention lesson with all the manipulatives and the interaction, and also uploaded that. So if a student missed that face-to-face time with their teacher, or if a student after the lesson wanted to go back in and watch it again, that they have a full video of the lesson as well. So those are some of the supports that we have added into our curriculum and the activities for students, as well as providing formative assessments. So exit tickets, so we know if students are learning, and then weekly assessments to really check and see are based on the standards that we're teaching and targeting, how are students performing remotely. And actually, I know Dr. Cobb, our Research and Accountability Assistant Superintendent, I know she's in here, but this week we've actually launched our first virtual MAP assessment. So, that's our screener that we give several times throughout the year. And this is our first time administering it and proctoring it in a remote environment. So we really have gotten feedback, and this summer we have tried to really focus on areas to really maximize learning for our students and take some of the pressure off of parents who are working or taking care of other children or doing other things around the house. So
definitely all of those points are noted, and thank you for continuing to give us feedback.
Any more questions? Well, we know there was a lot of information. As I said earlier in my opening comments, the team has done a phenomenal job planning. I know we've received a lot of feedback from community members. I received a lot of feedback through various social mediums and through Elevates. And we wanted to make sure our parents and our community knew that we are being proactive and are taking a very active stance in terms of what we're doing to ensure their safety, but more importantly, that their child is being educated. And as the group said, more than anything, the biggest change between what we provided and offered between March and the end of the school year is the role that the teacher is going to play. For some of our kids who'd had a little bit of difficulty getting through some of the PBLs and some of the other blended learning work, we know that parents played a major role in that. Moving forward for the summer and the fall, the teacher is going to play an even greater role in ensuring that that support is there for our students. And so with that, Ms. Newhouse, we're going to turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Dunn Oldfield. As you know, communication to our community is most important. So I appreciate all the various means that you will be using to reach out to our students and community. And I appreciate and say thank you again to all of our presenters who prepared this. I know it a short time for us and got the information to us to have on hand as I could make notes and view through my binder as you were talking. So as Winfred said, yes, we do still have a lot to finish reviewing in our binders, but these will be most helpful. So thank you so very much for this. Well, team, there are no other items on tonight's agenda. So I will now entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Madam President, I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Second. It's been moved by Deborah Jensen, second by Kelly Hodges, that the Board of Trustees adjourn this meeting. I will now poll the board members for their vote to adjourn this meeting. Winfred Adams.
Aye.
Kelly Hodges.
Aye.
Deborah Jensen.
Aye.
Justine Durant.
Aye.
Donald Davis.
Aye.
And myself, Rhonda Newhouse, vote aye. So the motion carries unanimously. There's no further business tonight. This meeting is officially adjourned at 9:29 p.m. Thank you again so very much to everyone. And yes, we did have a large number of participants, and we were happy to see that. And also, let me state, I know you said we are live on YouTube. So this means that the rest of the community can go back and see it on YouTube as well? They can, okay.
No, that link will come down, but this video will be posted on the board's webpage as all the other meeting videos are.
Okay, great. Well, I hope those on YouTube enjoyed it tonight and got a lot of informative information. Again, thank you, good night, and we appreciate everyone. Hugs and good night. Thank you.